Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On the Diamond and Into the Deep podcast with your boy Mahal. Spring training has begun. Spring has sprung. So, on today's episode, let's get into some stuff. Let's get into a little bit of what's next after pitchers and catchers. At what cost do these big free agents cost make sense for your Mariners? And of course, we'll get into, as always, your Seattle Sports Wraparound. So, happy Friday. It is Friday, February 16th. And let's get into it. All right. So let's kick off, as always, with some Mariners baseball. And let's start with some free agents. So obviously the Mariners roster is pretty intact right now. And if you were to make a guess, they probably don't make another move. And if they were to make another move, that move probably would have already come. But let's make a little exercise here. Let's say that in who knows how long, but let's say in 2 weeks, these big free agents, in the ones we're going to be talking about, are Chapman, Bellinger, and the hometown kid, Mr. Snell. Let's say they're not signed in a few weeks, and they want to get playing, so they drop their price. And there's been a lot of talk about this in Mariners land recently, if you've been paying attention to Twitter. This has been everywhere. So I'm going to give my take on it. At what price do they make sense? And at what price, if any price, will John Stanton open the checkbook just a slight bit more to give the Mariners that flexibility they need to add that dude? And I think it depends on the dude. Let's start with Chapman, as he's been all the talk recently, because he is a third baseman. And while I'm higher on the Mariners' third base platoon than a lot of people are, the defensive concerns are very real. And for a pitching staff that thrives as sinker ballers and ground ball pitchers, you're going to need a defense, especially in the infield, that is not complete trash. And bringing in a Chapman would improve that. Maybe not as much as people are saying, but it would improve that. And that is something that could be very important. However, if Chapman is still asking for something like 20 million AAV, I am saying absolutely not. There's no question in my mind that if Chapman is asking for that, he's not getting that from anyone. And at this point, I don't know what his market is. We've heard the Giants are in there somewhere. We've heard the Cubbies are in there somewhere. And those are two teams with money that is going to be higher to spend than your Seattle Mariners. All right. But let's say Chapman brings that AAV down to 10 million. That's where I think it starts to get interesting. But if you're the Mariners, you also cannot afford to give Chapman, I would say, more than 3 years. And even 3 years, I think, would be difficult giving him. And let's say they sign Chapman. What will Chapman bring to this Mariners team? Well, we don't really know what his bat's going to be. Because he was about as inconsistent can be. Right? You look at Chapman's April last year. And if you play MLB The Show, you know that Matt Chapman was Player of the Month. He was the Lightning player card in April. And why was that? Well, pretty easily put, it was because Chapman hit 5 home runs and hit 384 in April. In March and April, he hit 384. What was that WRC plus? The stat that is talked about so often? Yeah, that WRC plus was 216. And you're like, oh, 16% above average? 16 points above average? And you're like, no. 116 above average. Chapman OPS'd over 1,000. All right? He had video game numbers in April. It was unbelievable. Truly. There is no other way for you to think about it and put it. If you don't understand what I'm saying, the only thing you need to understand is that from the beginning of the season to the end of April, Chapman was otherworldly. Unfortunately, following that, his season took a slight dip. And by slight, I mean pretty catastrophic. If you want to look at the most basic number, you can look at his average. And that 384 dipped to 205. Those 5 home runs he hit, well, the number is bigger for the rest of the season at 12. That pace he was on plummeted. Looking at advanced stats, because this is something important. WRC plus, what did we say it was? 216. What is league average? 100. What was he for the rest of the season? 84. Yeah, that is bad. So it is impossible to know what you are going to get from a Matt Chapman. There's no way to project it, even if the projections are right. The projections have him at about 3.5 wins. And I would add that to this team. That is probably going to be better than what you get from a Josh Rojas and a Luis Urias. But again, it all comes down to that cost. And I don't think I'm willing to spend more than $10 million a year. And I'm definitely not wanting to give him more than 2 or 3 years. If you can get him for 1 year, you can get a prove it type deal. I would say absolutely. There is no such thing as a 1-year deal. Worst case scenario, it's a flop. Okay, you have Rojas and Urias. And how are you going to stash those dudes with Chapman on the roster? That's where it might get a little funky. All right? That's where it may, just may, get a little bit worrisome. But also, when you're looking at a dude, that shouldn't be what you are going to look at. That shouldn't be your worry. That shouldn't be your main thing. But as people have talked about, the main thing you're acquiring if you go and get Chapman, it's not his bat, it's his defense. And since joining Toronto, Chapman's defense has also fallen off a cliff. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it. Looking at fan graphs, if you look at the defensive statistic, they average it per the league. Last year, Chapman was at 5.7, which is like okay. It's fine. It's decent. It's not terrible. Let's look at his last year in Oakland. Okay. That was 2021. Defensively, he was worth 16.1. That's a lot better. All right. So Chapman is going to bring you decent defense. It's impossible to know what you can get. The dude is a dude that you could think, oh, maybe he'll have a bounce back type year. But it's a bounce back from 2 years, and I don't know if you want to bet on that. I think you're almost safer betting on a Luis Urias bounce back as well as a Josh Rojas. And then if one of those doesn't work, then you have the other one. And if they both work, then fan-frickin-tastic. That's depth. As we know, Polanco has a little bit of an injury history. Both those dudes can also play second base. So that's good. That is good. So, I mean, like I said, would I take Chapman in a vacuum? Sure. But it doesn't make sense unless you're really cutting that money down. That's about all you can say about it. You have to significantly cut that money. And even if it is significantly cut, it's still a question of whether he fits on this roster. The next guy I'm going to talk about is a completely different question. This guy, I think, makes a ton of sense on your roster. And that guy is Cody Bellinger. This is the guy that makes the most sense out of the three. Yet he's the one least talked about. And that's because people, in my opinion, are over worrying about third base. Me, on the other hand, I am more worried about the corner outfield. Because I don't know what you're going to get from Luke Raley. And I like Luke Raley. I do. I think he's a great piece. And getting him for my boy Jose Caballero, that's a great trade. But when you look at Luke Raley's second half, I don't know what you can expect from him. And when you pair that with the dude in Dominic Canzone, who has a very nice ceiling, again, you don't know what you're going to get from that. And then you have Mitch Haniger, who is just... I love Mitch Haniger. I do. I love Mitch. But the injury history is worrying. It really is. And I don't know what you can say or do to avoid that. It's going to be a little bit of luck. And it's kind of a theme with this roster. If they're healthy, this roster is going to be very good. But back to Bellinger. That's why he makes sense. I don't feel 100% good about that outfield. And let's say you add Bellinger. Now, am I going to pay $25 million a year plus? Absolutely not. Am I going to pay 20? If you can get Stanton to open the checkbook, I would go do that. I wouldn't give Bellinger more than 4 years, though. Would I give him 5? And that's an important question because I think he's going to be looking for at least 5. I'd be willing to if you can drop that AAV to something like 18. I'd be willing to. Because, again, that opens up the checkbook. That opens up a little bit more flexibility for in-season. And they're going to want that flexibility in-season. So we'll see what they do there. But Bellinger makes a lot of sense. He's an outfielder. He can play center field if you need him to. He can also play first base if you need him to. He's like Luke Raley in that defensive way. Except he's probably got a little bit better of a bat. But again, he's a dude where I don't know exactly what you're going to get from him. He won MVP in 2019. That is widely known. He also won a Silver Slugger and was 10th in MVP voting in the NL last year. He OPS'd 881. His OPS plus was 133, 33 above average for the league. His batting average was over 300, and he hit 26 home runs. You add that to this Mariners team, and yeah, we go from, yeah, we could win the division if a few things go right, to, yeah, we are favorites for this division, and maybe favorites for the AL. Because looking at the Orioles now, missing Bradish is a big missing link, especially when it's a UCL that what happens more often than not, and I don't want to precursor this, but what happens more often than not with a UCL strain, that oftentimes leads to something we baseball people like to call Tommy John surgery. And that would be a very, very bad thing for the Orioles, as they need pitching. And Bradish is one of their top starters. So you need him. And this gets me into a big point of mine. If you've been paying attention to my Twitter, I've been reiterating this a lot. Your Seattle Mariners need to have a fast start. You can't have one of those lackadaisical starts that we've grown accustomed to with this Mariners team. Houston is going to have starters out. Verlander has been now reported to be out for opening day and a little bit after. We know Texas has starters out until middle of the season. And now Bradish for the Orioles. You must get a fast start. You must jump ahead of these teams and stay consistent throughout the season. It's going to be crucial if you want to win the division and if you want to get a high postseason seed. It is massive. You have to do that. And if you add Cody Bellinger to this team, not only do I believe you can do that, but I believe you can be an unbelievable team for the entire year. And I believe that you can put yourself in as a World Series contender. You're going to have to add some starting pitching depth probably, but go do it. If you can get him for a price that you're willing to pay and that you can put into the budget, into the payroll that will fit there, go do it right now. Go do it. Because you add a dude that can do that to your team, and you could see some big things. You could see some great things from this team. And he does have a little bit of rough history before last year, but he changed his swing. He changed some stuff, and I think it's here to stay. And that's why I would be willing to give him 5 years, 18 million, 4 years, 20 million, maybe even 5 years, 20 million a year. Maybe I am willing to do that. But will he accept that? Probably not. That's the same thing with this next guy. In hometown kid Blake Snell. And look, I talked about Snell at the beginning of the offseason. It's been talked about throughout the offseason. It's a hometown kid. It would be a great story, but he doesn't fit the Mariners' motto as a pitcher. And he's going to have to significantly cut what he's asking for it to make sense for this roster. And it would be great to add a good starter because that allows you to put Brian Wu into Double-A. So it allows you to rotate him and Miller to make sure their innings are good. And I'll talk about Miller in a second. And that's why Snell would make sense. But he doesn't fit the Mariners' pitching philosophy and the Mariners' real organizational philosophy of control the zone. We heard Harry Ford talk about this last week on the hot stove. We've heard Tyler Locklear talk about it. What they have said is that the Mariners stay control the zone. They are all about the control the zone, nonstop, a ton. And we'd heard that before, but it's interesting for me at least, hearing it from a player, hearing it from multiple players, and hearing it from prospects, because it shows how important that is organizationally. And it's working with pitchers. We'll see what it does for hitters. With dudes probably starting at the end of this year, and definitely in 2025, with a Cole Young and a Harry Ford if they don't get traded. We'll see what happens. And it's exciting. But Snell doesn't fit that. He walks a lot of dudes. And while a lefty would be fantastic to add to this rotation, especially a lefty with experience, that would be fantastic. But Snell is going to have to cut that contract. He's going to have to cut that to around 15 to maybe 20. Again, depending on what Stanton's willing, but even 20, I would say very hesitant on. 15, I would say, yeah, okay, you could go make that deal if you can get it between 1 and 3 years. But you have to be hesitant because I'm not the greatest believer in Snell. And he's a good pitcher, but I am not this massive Snell stan. And the story would be great, and I would amp it up all I will if it happens. But one, I don't think it's going to happen. And two, I don't know how much it makes sense for this roster. He's probably makes more sense than Chapman, but he definitely makes less sense than the dude I think would be massive for this roster in Cody Bellinger. Continuing on, pitchers and catchers have reported. It's baseball season. We are seeing content daily, hourly on Twitter of workouts. And it's a lot of fun. It is. It's a lot of fun. We saw videos of Luke Raley working at first base today. We saw some great videos of Bryce Miller's splitter, and we heard him talk about it last week. He says he's going to slowly introduce that splitter that looks filthy and was getting swing and misses in live BP today. He's been facing some live hitters with it. Maybe not in game, but they are live hitters nonetheless, and it looks good. He's also changed that arm slot a little bit to make sure that it matches with the fastball on all his pitches, which is good. It's very good. Miller is introducing the splitter to combat left-handed hitters, which he saw a lot of later in the season. Last year, lefties hit .303 and slugged .558 off of Miller. They hit 12 home runs compared to 6 that Miller gave up against righties. And they were just all around better. Miller struggled. He had 72 strikeouts against righties and only 47 against lefties. And that splitter is a pitch that is going to be useful against both, but especially left-handed hitters, and it will generate a lot more swing and miss, which is going to be crucial for a Bryce. And it's going to be an important pitch. Miller struggled down the stretch last year, and maybe that was due to some tougher, I want to say, circumstances due to some rest and fatigue probably. But it was also because he was facing a lot more left-handed hitters, and it was just he was getting a little bit beat up. And that's okay. That's understandable. He's a rookie. That's going to happen. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. But to see his emphasis on combating those struggles and trying to make sure that they don't happen again makes me happy, and it makes me very excited for Bryce's 2024. Wow, I can't believe it's 2024. For his 2024 season, it's going to be amazing. And I'm really excited to see what happens. As soon as spring training games happen, I'm expecting to see Bryce play, and I think that they're probably going to keep him a little bit slow, but watch for it. And if you head down to spring training, like I talked about last week, watch the prospects for sure. It's one of my favorite things to do down there, and there's less people doing it. But also watch Bryce Miller. Watch the pitchers. Watch the splitter. See what he's doing. See if you can see that arm slot being the exact same and that release point being the exact same for all his pitches. It could make a world of change for Mr. Bryce. Unfortunately, we heard that Gregory Santos has a little bit of shoulder fatigue, I believe. I think it's down in his arm, maybe even a little bit. But it doesn't sound too worrying. We knew that was coming, maybe, and they're going to have him start off a little bit slow in the spring. And again, not too big of a worry. Glad they're taking it safe. And I'm just hoping it doesn't turn into a situation like Munoz a few years ago, where it takes a little bit for him to ramp it up and get into game action and game fitness and whatnot. But I think he will probably be fine. I don't want to jinx it, but I he probably will be fine, and I hope he is because he is filthy, and I cannot wait to see the three-headed monster that Santos, Munoz, and Brash will be. And if I were to go get a Mariners jersey right now, and I already have a Julio one, so I wouldn't want to get one of those. I would get a Cal, I would get a Kirby, I would get a JP, and after that, Brash and Munoz would probably be tied neck and neck next for me to get a jersey of. Because those two dudes are electric and they're fun to watch. Now, one thing that's been interesting with camp starting this week, and it's not everybody, it's been only pitchers and catchers that are required to report. But what's been interesting to look at from pictures and videos is the amount of position players already present and working out there. They don't have to report till Monday, and the full squad workout, the first one isn't till Tuesday. But many of them are already there, many of them are already working, and they have been for multiple weeks. And what does that show me? This team is going to work their butt off. This team is going to work to make sure that they make up for last season and more. And I think we could see big things from not only Julio, but the roster as a whole. Cal looks to be slimmed down. He's no more big dumper. He's a little bit of like a little slim dumper. We might have to change the nickname. What are we calling him? Just dumper? Slim dumper? No dumper? How can you get rid of big dumper? We'll figure this out as the season starts, but he looks good. He looks very fit, and he looks very lean and slim, and he looks ready for the season. So I'm excited. I think he will probably retain that power as his legs don't look to have lost a ton of muscle, but we'll see what happens, and I'm sure he'll gain some more muscle as the season continues, being in a squat the entire season. But, we'll see what happens. Yeah, but seeing these players working and working hard already before they're even required to be there is awesome. It truly is. And it's exciting. And I can't wait for Monday when it's report day and Tuesday when we get first full squad workout videos and pictures. It is going to be awesome. Truly awesome. We are just around the corner from game starting, just around the corner from everything. The season starting, we're almost there. And I can't wait. It is going to be a fun season. And I'm amped. I truly am. There's no other way to put it. I'm amped for this season. And I can't wait to see this team, how different it is to watch dudes play baseball. To watch baseball. The game that we all love. It'll be great. Now let's get into everybody's favorite, the Seattle Sports Wraparound. Let's start with some Seahawks. Seahawks have hired Ryan Grubb. I've talked about him a little bit on the pod. I've talked about him more if you've talked to me outside of the pod. But Seahawks got Ryan Grubb, former Washington Huskies offensive coordinator, and now former Alabama offensive coordinator, if you want to say that. But really, he rejected Bama twice. And one of the times it was with Kalen DeBoer. Not that DeBoer rejected him, but he was with DeBoer, who he's like been right-hand man to, Alexander Hamilton to George Washington recently. But Seahawks got him. He's back in Seattle. He's going to be the offensive coordinator, and I think it is a great hire. You pair that offensive brain with McDonald's defensive brain, and we have got a coaching staff, y'all, and it could be a lot of fun. We'll see what happens with the offseason. Hopefully, they'll be able to re-sign Leonard Williams and do some big things from there. But this is a big hire. The coaching staff looks great. Moving on to the Sounders, they revealed their anniversary kit for their 50th anniversary, and there's been a lot of hate, but I actually like it. My only issue is the shorts. I wish the shorts were a little bit. I don't know what I wish. I almost wish they were white, but I think green would also look kind of nice. But just the blue looks a little funky, in my opinion, with like the pinstripes. But I like the jersey as a whole. I would wear that kit. I think it's a lot better than the Bruce Lee kit. And I really liked the Bruce Lee kit at first, but they overwore it, and I it have bad affiliations of that jersey with the team, and it doesn't sit well in my mind. It looks to me in the way I envision it as a like piece of barf. That's not even a thing, but a piece of barf. Sounders also open Longacres, their new practice facility down. It's pretty close to Starfire, where their now former one was, but it's a little bit closer to Renton, and it looks beautiful. It looks absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen pictures, go look them up. Look up Sounders Longacres on Twitter, Instagram, Google, wherever you want to, and I'm sure you'll find some fantastic pictures and videos. And it looks fantastic, and I hope I get to go sometime because it looks amazing. Your Kraken are back too. They started off extremely slow from the break. Two pretty lackadaisical games that were kind of boring to watch and kind of brutal to watch. But they followed that up with a massive win against the Islanders in a shootout, which they never win shootouts, but it was pretty big one and it was fun to watch and I enjoyed it. Thomas Tater Tot Tatar. I need to think of I gotta figure out the way to say it. Thomas Tater Tot Tatar with the winning goal in the shootout. And then we got big saves from Gruby in that game. So it's good to see Gruby back as much as I dislike him. And then the Kraken followed that up. Last night they won against the Boston Bruins 4-1, which again, great win. Matty Beniers was on point last night, which is good to see. An assist and a goal. And they're now back to 4 points of a playoff spot. That is 2 wins. The teams in front of them do have a game in hand, but it's getting closer and it's exciting. So they just got to keep winning. Stay close, make a jump, win games, win big games, get points. That's what they have to do. It is going to be massive. But they looked good last night. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I watched some of it. But they looked good from what I saw. And I mean, winning 4-1 in Boston is massive. So that's a great win. And hopefully they can continue it. So thank you all for listening. Again, this has been another episode of On the Diamond and Into the Deep. This is episode 17. 17 of these episodes. So if you listen to the whole thing, this is episode 18. Whoa, episode 18. Sorry. So if you've listened to all these episodes, thank you. I appreciate it. If you've listened all the way through, again, thank you. I really appreciate it. Go follow on social media. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Wherever you're listening, give a follow. Follow the Twitter. I've been more active on there than anything else. Follow the Instagram. I've also been decently active on there, but mostly Twitter. Go Mariners. Go Kraken. Go Sounders. Go Hawks. Go Mariners. It's baseball season. Happy spring. Happy spring training. Go Mariners. It's game time, baby. Let's go. See y'all. Peace.